Telemarketing businesses need to be aware of several different types of do not call lists and the applicable laws. For example, in the US, we have a national do not call database containing the telephone numbers of individuals who have elected not to receive telemarketing calls. Additionally, 12 states now have their own local, state-specific do not call lists. Those lists are totally separate from the national do not call list, but also contain the telephone numbers of residents in those states who don't want to receive telemarketing calls. Additionally, telemarketing companies need to create and update and enforce their own internal entity-specific do not call list. This is your opt-out list containing the telephone numbers of people who tell you specifically to stop calling. So anytime someone says, leave me alone, don't call me anymore, take me off your list, put me on your do not call list, etc., you should be updating your internal do not call list. Also, the federal government will be releasing at some point in the future a PSAP list, Public Safety Answering Point list, that will contain the telephone numbers, both private and governmental, where emergency calls are fielded. What exemptions exist? Well, written consent is an exemption to both the national do not call list and the state do not call lists. So even if someone is on one of those do not call databases, you're allowed to keep calling them if they have given your company written permission to make telemarketing calls. Also, if someone gives you a new written consent, they get to come off of your internal opt-out list. So if they opt back in after they've opted out, you can resume telemarketing to them. What about calling your own customers? Well, under the national do not call rules, and at least in some of the states, there is an EBR exemption, or established business relationship exemption. This is normally defined as when the consumer has bought something from the company or paid the company within the last 18 months, that's called transaction EBR, or when they've at least made a product or service inquiry within the previous 3 months, that's called inquiry EBR. If you have that EBR relationship, you can keep calling them even if they're on the national do not call list. Remember, not every state has the same exemption to their local no-call rules. Now, what about business-to-business or B2B calls? Well, some B2B calls are exempt from the do not call lists and some are not. It just depends on the type of B2B solicitation. For example, if you're calling a business number but you intend to sell something to the individual employees, that's not the type of business call that's exempt. How do you comply with the do not call rules? Well, at least for the national and state lists, you're required to go by those lists and then scrub or suppress those numbers out unless you're exempt. There are many vendors out there who will help you do that.